What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Her Hoop Stats podcast. It's Tyler, it's Richard, and what a night of basketball it was last night, Richard. We have plenty to talk about, but before we get into that, of course, make sure you're tapped in here for the Her Hoop Stats podcast every weekday. We're coming at you. I mean, what better time to be tapped in and subscribed than right now, WNBA playoffs, where you got games every night. Come get a podcast every day here at Her Hoop Stats. Richard, 2 game threes now on the way. Maybe not what we expected, just generally speaking, to be here in this position from both of these series. But let's start off with the first game of the night, Indiana and Atlanta. We'll start off with the winners first. In the Fever, we'll just kind of start off just generally speaking before we maybe dive into some more specifics. Just from an Indiana perspective, like I mean, dominated this game to put it frankly. For you, what whether it was surprising or just the thing that you liked most from this Indiana team in this win?
I mean, defensively, they played with so much more energy, so much more effort that I was saying on Blue Sky last night that what I like about the good team defenses in the league often is the precision that teams like Minnesota play with, but also help and rotation is so much about effort in that you fill the one gap and then you trust your teammates are going to fill the next gap behind you, and you close down one player, close down the next. And Indiana did that so much better defensively last night than they did in game one. And that just got them rolling on defense. And defense is what won them the game, largely speaking, because Atlanta couldn't get anything going, especially Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard gave them basically nothing on the perimeter. Couldn't hit a shot all night. Offensively, I love the game that Aaliyah Boston had. We've had too many games, regular season, postseason, whenever, where she's just too passive, where she gives up the ball, she moves it, she makes the right play, but not always the aggressive play, the one you want, where she just attacks the game, attacks the player, tries to score. And last night we got one of those where they kept feeding her the ball and she kept going to the hoop. And that's what you want to see from your star player.
Right. Yeah, no, that's kind of the game I've been waiting for to see from Aaliyah, because it's never been a problem of capability. Like we know that Aaliyah is capable of doing that, and I think that's what makes it so frustrating, because I've been in a very similar boat with just, again, it's not a matter of she can't. It felt like for one reason or another, no matter how you want to split up the blame pie, if you will, between the individual or the coaching and like the game plan or whatever it may be, but ultimately that wasn't happening, where it felt like Aaliyah was truly going and searching for her own shot and going and trying to score in her own way. And to go and do that against Bree Jones is no easy task either by any means. Like, they were battling over the course of this game.
Yep.
Oh, it was a blast. But to see Aaliyah Boston come out on top, again, not a surprise in terms of talent, but it's just been, we've kind of been waiting to see it. And to finally see it felt like such a major moment in this series, potentially, if this has kind of been unlocked, if you will, right? And so to see that feels major, and I'm very excited to see if that continues into game three. I mean, it's got to continue down. You obviously mentioned Aaliyah, but Kelsey Mitchell, one of the other stars here for Indiana, led the way in scoring. And I was interested coming into this series just because Atlanta's kind of unique in like the types of bodies they can throw at you defensively on the perimeter, with Alicia Gray, with Ryan Howard, and just trying to maybe have a little bit more size than a lot of teams have on the perimeter that can keep up with guards. But Kelsey Mitchell undeterred in this game in terms of efficiently scoring and doing so. 29 minutes. A lot of these starters didn't even play. Like, none of them played more than 30 minutes, because I mean, just being able to rest due to the score on this one. But so being able to put the stats up in the shorter amount of time is impressive in its own right. But for you and Kelsey Mitchell in this game, like, just being able to efficiently do what she was able to do again against a capable defense in Atlanta on the perimeter, like, trying to be efficient in the playoffs is important, right? And trying to do so, especially for Kelsey Mitchell, where obviously Caitlin Clark and a whole lot of other players with Indiana team, so a lot of responsibilities on her to go and be the scorer and to do so efficiently. Just your thoughts on her game last night.
Yeah, I mean, it was another Kelsey Mitchell game. She's been doing this all season. She's taken it into the playoffs. She's doing the same thing. to be honest, she's been doing this a lot of years, but no one's been paying attention because it's been Indiana winning 8 games a season.
Right.
But now that there's people paying a lot more attention to the Fever, and she's gotten a bit more help, even without Clark being available, she's gotten more help on this roster. So yeah, she's that good.
Yeah.
It's why she's going to be on the probably going to be first team All WNBA this season. She was on mine at least.
Mhm.
I I mean, Atlanta have mostly put Canada on her. You talked about the length that they've got with
Yeah.
Howard and Gray, but it's mostly been Canada because I think they think Canada can keep up with her a
The
little better,
speed,
can
yeah.
get round screens a little more rather than going under them. But whether it's her or Gray or very occasionally Howard, Atlanta are going under too many screens, or
Mhm.
last night kind of getting forced under too many screens in that the screener kind of turns into the
Mhm.
defender
Mhm.
and manages to push them under, and then Mitchell gets too much room. Either you usually see her coming from the right corner so that she can come into the middle on her strong hand, or
Yeah.
she just pulls up and hits the three because there's too much room. So yeah, she's hard to stop, and you wonder if Atlanta sort of push the defense even more towards her. I mean, that again will leave Boston in a little more room if she's willing to play a game last night and attack
Mhm.
like she did last night. But beyond Mitchell and Boston, they still haven't had that much from the rest of the roster.
Right.
So you have to try and lean the defense a little more towards those two and say, okay, can anyone else beat us? Is
Yeah.
Natasha Howard going to put up 20 points? Is Lexi Hull going to hit 6 threes in a game? Can Odyssey Sims put
Mhm.
up 20?
Mhm.
So yeah, maybe for game 3 we see Atlanta sort of say someone else beat us other than those two.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that would have been honestly my strategy to begin with this series
Yeah,
because it's just such a depleted roster at this point. So, like, when you have 2 stars, it's a whole lot different than having 3. Like, if Caitlin's on the floor and you're trying to, push on 2 of those stars, that 3rd star, and like, you feel confident in if you're Indiana, like, "Okay, they can go win us this game." They don't have that other player right now. And, like, certainly you have players that can, but it's
yeah,
certainly it's just not as certain as it could be if, this was a healthy Indiana roster. So now you find yourselves in this position where you're still, I mean, their 2 best players are still playing with the 2 best players, and you haven't really done, at least last night, you didn't do much to deter that at all. And so I would imagine I'm with you on that and expecting that type of shift here for Atlanta. I mean that it was the exact home court advantage you expected from Indiana last night. I mean the crowd was rocking, and certainly I think that came into the play, like the energy of it, as you kind of mentioned, like it felt like Indiana just kind of outworked Atlanta just across the board, frankly, like whether it be rebounding, like you had the guards rebounding like crazy last night, like just generally speaking across the board, it felt like Indiana was ready last night and Atlanta was not. But I want to talk about Atlanta because to me, last night I felt like was like Atlanta's worst fear coming true, and like what worried me about them potentially in the postseason, and that was inefficient shooting from Gray and Howard, and your threes just frankly not falling really at all. 5 and 19 from three, and they never really. I guess the thing I was interested in seeing was if this happens, can you flip the switch and start playing inside out and play through Bree Jones and try and maybe just shift your point of attack and your point of focus? That didn't happen with Bree Jones only getting 6 shots up. So last night, in a lot of ways, was to me the fear that I had with Atlanta, where if the shots aren't falling from the perimeter, what are you falling back on, and how do you stop from this happening? A game like this where you just get blown out. From your perspective on that, like is that something that worries you going forward? Is this more of a one-off game in your eyes? Like, how are you kind of taking this information going forward into game 3?
no, I agree with you that yeah, this is a we talk about it being a make or miss league, but this is a make or miss team. When you're going to
Mhm,
shoot that many threes on a game by game basis, yeah, that you're going to have nights where they don't drop. I thought Indiana did a good job of contesting.
mhm.
I mean, it's Alicia Gray in particular. She took what 16 shots, hit 4.
Yeah.
Everything was contested. There was a hand in her face all night long on top of her, and yeah, but I think you're right that you need to have a shift when you can't get going with what your first option is most of
Mhm.
the time offensively. Then you got players who can score. It's not like this team doesn't have an interior option.
Right.
They got Brianna Jones and Griner can both give you offense inside if you need it.
Mhm.
So yeah, it'll be interesting again in game three. Do you have that as your basis to start? We saw it in game one to a certain extent that
Mhm.
the game started with Jones and Boston going at each other inside, and then both
Mhm.
of them disappeared for a while. You
Mhm.
ended up Jones eventually piled up a few points, but it was mostly sort of within the rhythm of the offense rather than
Right.
forcing it down to her. And yeah, especially if they do get through game three, and then they've got to come up with something for the next round as well. Yeah,
Mhm.
they need backup options definitely.
Yeah, and that's again, this has been my fear with Atlanta because, like, in terms of, because even though you have obviously teams that take threes, right? But this is a pretty unique scenario where it's like your stars are on the perimeter. Like your main players, like your main offensive cogs are on the perimeter. And when you think about generally speaking across the WNBA, and this has been true for the longest, it's been a league of bigs, right? And so even though these are you know, Alicia Gray, Ryan Howard, maybe more of a consider, the big guards, if you will, but like they're still operating on the perimeter, and that's not no, that hasn't really been an equation for success, generally speaking, over the history of the WNBA. When your go to number one option is not a four or a five, and but the thing is, it's weird though, because as you mentioned, they have Bree Jones, who like on any given night can be that if you want her to be that. And so I'm interested in I'm right there with you in whether they start out like that and just trying to go straight to Jones and maybe even trying to get Aaliyah Boston in foul trouble because like there's just not any
Mhm.
other options for Indiana. If that happens, like she's gonna have to just play through that foul trouble. And that's going to change the entire mindset of the Fever and Aaliyah Boston. So just from even that perspective, I would like to see them go into Bree Jones more just to try and, if nothing else, get Aaliyah Boston out of the game for Indiana, who's just been the main kind of piece of their offense in terms of whether even if it's not scoring, the facilitation, everything that she brings is so important and vital to this Indiana Fever team. So I'm intrigued by it, but again, this was in a whole lot of ways for Indiana and to me, they're the worst fear coming true in their performance where they aren't able to hit those shots in that way, and that's scary, and that's what I was worried of because how do you combat that? And last night they didn't at all. Like there was no pushback on those shots being missed. I was like, there was no pivot at all, and that's what has made me nervous going into this postseason. And unfortunately for Atlanta, my worries kind of came true a little bit on that one. I'm interested though from your perspective, looking ahead to Game Three, just a little bit quickly here before we move on to the Storm and Aces insane game last night. Is this something for Indiana? Obviously, it was a unique situation in terms of again at home. You have the 1-1-1 playoff series now. You have that insane home court advantage, and I feel like that was a genuine part of this game and the way that Indiana just came out and was working and was hooping and doing what they do. Can this continue into game three for Indiana in terms of finding this? Or again, was this more, even if it's just in this series in particular, do you think it's going to be more of an off night for Atlanta and they'll be able to respond at home?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that little bit more desperation for a team that is facing elimination rather than the one that can go through,
Yeah.
which I think we saw in both games last night. That
Yeah. Agreed.
that gives you that little bit extra energy that your season's over if you lose that night. Um, I think Atlanta go into game three as the favorite, but maybe not by that much. Because Indiana showed what they're capable of last night. They didn't get what I asked for at the start of the series, which was like one of the other sort of role players stepping up with a
Hmm.
big offensive game. But they got lots of good games from those additional
Hmm.
players. Lexi Hull giving them a good game defensively on Howard. They got good games off the bench from Brianna Turner, who's done so little most of the season, but
Hmm.
has given them good minutes. Even Aerial Powers,
Yeah.
when like Hull was in foul trouble, came off the bench, gave them someone on the wing to give them some extra. Gave them someone with no fear, who's
Hmm.
going to inspire the crowd as well. So yeah, I think Indiana definitely have a shot in Game Three, but I would still put Atlanta down as favorites because they're probably going to make more threes
Hmm.
even when the defense is good, they're probably going to make more than they did last night just by the law of averages. So we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, it's close to a coin flip, to be honest.
Yeah, to me, this game three is much closer than the game three we're about to talk about in
I
Vegas
agree. Yep.
and Seattle. This one is a lot more volatile, right? And to me, and again, we're about to talk Stormation, but like Vegas has like a bit more of a foundation to lean back upon when now they are facing elimination. Atlanta hasn't been here in the postseason as a group together as this roster. They don't have a ton of experience in terms of that, like in comparison to where the Aces stand. And that's where I'm interested in like, okay, like we're actively learning about this Atlanta team. Like in a lot of ways, like for Vegas, like obviously completely new pieces and it's a new team this year. But like in a lot of ways, we know Chelsea Gray, Jackie Young, Asia Wilson in the playoffs. We don't really know this Atlanta team like that for this. So we're actively learning as we go, and so is Atlanta, right? So to me, that's where I get a bit more hesitant with the Dream in terms of my confidence in them in a game three. I agree with you. I'd still have them going in as the favorite, and like until proven otherwise, like I expect them to advance. But I'm with you in that it's much closer than what I would anticipate from game three of the other series. But we're going to talk about that. Let's talk about last night's game two. I just want to start off here. Dominique Malonga. I mean, she's only 19. This is as presumably this is as bad as she's ever going to be, and she's already this good. And that's terrifying. The fourth quarter from Dominique Malonga and amongst others on the Seattle team certainly, but I mean I couldn't have left that game more impressed with Malonga. Obviously, you have the and one, you have the free throw after that was clutch, but also the defense on Asia Wilson and being given that task as a 19-year-old in the playoffs to go and guard Asia Wilson, and especially when you have other options on this team. It's not like this was like the only idea you could have possibly thrown there, but like you had other potential options. You have Ezzy McMcCoy, you have Neko Gumake. Like there's technically other options, but Malonga was the right choice at the right time from Coach Noel Quinn. Um, your thoughts on the rookie's performance last night?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this the second half of the season. She's got
Mhm,
a lot of talent. She's got physical gifts that we have basically never seen.
mhm,
Someone with this size, this length, and this coordinated
yeah,
is basically unheard of in the women's game. And yeah, it's going to be incredibly fun watching her grow over the next 20 years.
mhm,
It's
right,
um, it yeah, and stepping up, and that I mean, Skylar Diggins said it in the interview after the game that running the floor like that for that layup with 30 seconds left was impressive, but then stepping up cool as ice and making the free throw after it as well
100%.
at
Mhm,
19, when all of the eyes are on you, all of the crowd, everything comes to a hush, and then you just step up and knock it down. Yeah, that was something. I did just want to say one thing on that play while we're there. I was surprised Becky Hammond didn't challenge that call on
mm,
Chelsea Gray coming across with the reaching on Malonga for that finish, because you watch it back, there's very little
this
contact,
wasn't a lot, yeah.
and might have got it back, and it would have counted as a timeout anyway.
Mhm,
And they were going to call timeout after the free throw regardless. And it would have iced the 19-year-old before she shot the free throw too.
mhm.
So yeah, they had a challenge left, and I thought Becky could have used it then. That might have worked out better.
Yeah, I think it's a great call. Yeah, it wasn't a ton of contact, but ultimately they get the foul. Malonga steps up and hits the free throw. As you mentioned, cool as can be. Like no issue. You would have had every like understandable excuse for any of those moments, right? In the lead up to the fourth quarter, it'd be like, oh well, she's a rookie, and like it would have been like a valid like, oh okay, well if this went wrong, she's a rookie, she's only 19, and instead I'm saying she's a rookie, she's only 19, and she didn't mess up any of that, and she was great, and now like I tweeted this out, but the idea of like prime Dominique Malonga right now is absolutely terrifying to me. Like obviously that's we got a long ways to go before we even hit
We got
there.
like 8, 9 years till
No,
that. Yeah.
literally. And so like if she's already this good, like oh my goodness. I mean she's gonna be insane. But to continue on, because this was a game that Seattle they were in full survival mode, especially like the back half of the fourth quarter, like just clawing their way back. Um Not the best execution from Vegas down the stretch, generally speaking, but ultimately, like Seattle had to go and rip this one from Vegas there at the end. Um, I Erica Wheeler was a big part of that, and some of the shot making where I'm like, "Oh my goodness, please don't shoot that." Okay, went in, cool. It's kind of the Erica Wheeler clutch time experience.
The no,
Uh,
no, oh, yes shot. Yeah.
yes, 100%. And I felt like a couple of those. Skylar Diggins obviously had the big shot as well there. Oh, let's talk about Skylar because I thought the she kind of had like it was a bit of a roller coaster of a game. Not the strongest first quarter, comes in the second quarter and really pushes it along. A little bit quiet third quarter, fourth quarter comes back in that way. Um, I guess from that perspective, it kind of is almost a story of the storm in terms of like maybe the roller coaster of the season that they've had. But for you, your takeaways on Skylar Diggins last night.
Yeah, I mean, I think she kind of personified what the Storm did last night in that
Mm,
they had to show up with energy and effort because game 1 on Sunday was pretty embarrassing, to be
yeah,
honest. They
yeah.
that
Skylar
I
said that
mean,
herself. She was embarrassed. Yeah.
I was watching it, and after 30 seconds, I said they might lose this by 30, and they
Hmm.
basically did.
Hmm.
And it was that clear that quickly on Sunday night that they weren't there. They didn't show up for game 1 in a best of 3 playoff series,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous.
Right.
And yeah, if they hadn't shown up with energy last night, the crowd might have turned on them, even with that home crowd advantage that they get
Hmm.
in Climate Pledge. And Quinn probably would have been out of a job. We'll see
Hmm.
whether she ultimately is anyway after this season. But yeah, they showed up, and the first thing they did was play hard.
Hmm.
That was what they needed to do to begin the game. I mean, Vegas still shot a really high percentage. They had, I think it was 58% in the first half, 50% by the end of the game.
Hmm.
So the defense didn't necessarily work that well, but they were flying around. They were at least making Vegas work for what they got.
Hmm.
And yeah, and Diggins was part of that. She was not going to let them go out quietly.
Yeah.
Basically, if they were going to lose, they were going to lose anyway, giving it the best shot they had to give it.
Hmm.
And eventually, they made the plays, and they got a little bit of luck in the fourth quarter down the stretch. Those balls bounced in for Wheeler when they could have bounced anywhere. They got a couple of they got a couple of calls from the refs that,
Mm,
yeah, I mean, there was one travel on Jackie Young where her pivot foot might have moved about an inch,
mm.
and the ref was standing right next to it and called it a walk.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need that. That balances out the bad calls that you might have got during the season as well, or
Mhm.
during the night even. So yeah, they got the right bounce, and they in the end they pulled it out. They made the plays down the stretch. I mean, even that final play, Lloyd's wide open for 3 to tie the game and send it to overtime right at the
Mhm.
death. That didn't go great, and they got the right bounce of the ball.
Right. Yeah, and even the Chelsea Gray pass, like, that was technically open. It was a tough pass to make that goes out for the
But
turnover,
yeah,
but
that was makeable. Yeah,
yeah, but it was certainly there. Like, it's hard to even be mad at that one because like, it was there. Like, you just had to make the pass and just weren't able to connect there with that, but yeah, no, I'm with you in the sense of Skylar personified everything the Storm needed last night, and she had said, like, they had talked about on the broadcast, like, she was embarrassed by that first game, and hopefully the whole team was because it was embarrassing. Like, it
they ought to have
to
been. Yeah,
to ask for effort in the playoffs isn't it shouldn't be something we have to ask. Like,
no,
that shouldn't be a thing that you have
no.
to try and muster up here at all.
I mean, Hammond was saying that with Vegas all season long. I will
Mhm,
not coach effort.
mhm,
I expect you to give that regardless. Yeah,
yeah.
I'll coach skills. I'll coach sets, but yeah, I won't coach effort. I'll pick the players, and if you don't show it, you don't get to play.
Yeah, and if there was any player in the league, I think that if I needed my team to lock in and actually show some effort, I think Skylar Diggins would be the one I want on the court to try and
Yeah,
to make that happen. Because Lord knows she'll give it. If nobody else will, when it's time, when the back's against the wall, Skylar Diggins will certainly show up and give, if nothing else, give the effort. She was great last night. If you're Seattle and able to get the 3-point shooting, you're feeling pretty good, right? But ultimately, Vegas was right there still the entire time while having that because as you mentioned, the defense maybe not as incredibly strong as it can be for Seattle at times, but ultimately able to steal this one. Let's flip over to Vegas and just your general thoughts on their performance. Again, not a bad Vegas game, just a game that
no,
we got away from it.
yeah. I thought they, largely speaking, played fine. And yeah, obviously down the stretch, sort of Malonga's length troubled Wilson a little bit, and she had a couple. She fell on her arm at one point,
Mhm,
and there was a foul with about 6 minutes left where Magdagor sort of caught her in the head, and she had to shake that off a little bit as well. So I don't know whether those were affecting her in those final minutes where because she didn't score for the last 6 minutes of the game, and she was a little bit out of the offense. We've seen that with Vegas before, though. Sometimes where they rely on Wilson to sort of to be their mainstay all through the game, and then someone like Chelsea Gray steps up and closes the game out in the final minute or two because it's much easier for ball handlers to do than for bigs. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I don't think Vegas did a whole lot wrong, and they'll come out for Game 3 expecting to do the same things and win the game. That Seattle don't get the bounces, don't hit as many threes as they did last night. Skylar hit a lot of pull up twos. Wheeler
Mhm.
did as well. So yeah, hitting those shots in the mid range, they're not usually an efficient shot. So yeah, I don't think Vegas will be too scared by that game. Obviously, it breaks the streak, but I think they will still back themselves to be strong favorites for Game 3.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Again, I wouldn't. It's not much I would change really from what Vegas did. I think the 3-point defense can be better, like in just getting a hand up and contesting. But ultimately, they should have. I mean, and every indication is that they should have won this game, right? You had multiple opportunities to go home, and even after Seattle had fully completed the comeback, like you talked about the Chelsea Gray turnover, the Jewel Lloyd three at the end to tie it, like everything was right there for the taking. We're just ultimately unable to kind of fully close it out, which is frustrating. But this almost to me might be in a weird way. Obviously, you never want to lose, especially in the best of three. But like, kind of one of those healthy losses where like you kind of break the streak now before it becomes like a thing. Later on in the
Yeah,
playoffs, and you're facing a Minnesota in the finals, or who whatever it might be. And you have this long streak, and I'm honestly from just if I'm from Vegas' perspective, like I'm kind of not mad to have this, and kind of like a reminder, like yeah, like this isn't a foregone conclusion by any means, and
yeah,
not that they've really been operating like that, but like again, this is to me, and kind of mentioned we were talking about the Atlanta and Indiana game three. I'm not worried about Vegas in game three, like in the way where I am with Atlanta. Atlanta needs to change things. Vegas just needs to close the game, and that's a very big difference in how game two went for either of these top seeds in these matchups. So I to me do more of the same, and I think you're going to be okay when you take this game back to Vegas in front of your home crowd. I think you mentioned the what looked like an elbow injury on Asia Wilson's shooting arm. That's
mm,
like I'm not worried about it until I'm supposed to be, in terms of it. But I'll absolutely be looking out for that in game three, because if that is a genuine issue, that changes the complexion of this game three and what they could be if Asia Wilson isn't able to be as aggressive as we have grown accustomed to her being, especially over this win streak for Vegas. If she's not able to reach that, now you're having to rely on other players, and certainly they have them, but they haven't been nearly as consistent as Asia Wilson has been over the course of his win streak. So I'll be eyeing it again. I'm not going to be worried about it until I'm told I need to be. If I see it on the injury report or anything like that, or if we get to the game and it looks clearly different. Um, Again, to me, this was a Seattle Storm team that was in absolute survival mode, especially in that fourth quarter. And they have good players. Again, they have been worse than what is on their roster on paper. So to see them step up in a moment like that doesn't surprise me in front of their home crowd, doesn't surprise me. And again, on paper, they are good. Like it hasn't translated into the record you would expect them to be. So to see them kind of reach one of those peaks in that moment is not a surprise to me. But can they sustain that for an entire game three and try and avoid being eliminated on the road where Vegas is also now facing elimination? I frankly don't see that happening.
yeah.
And
I
I
mean,
expect Vegas to win.
we're not saying it's like it's completely impossible that
Right.
Seattle could win Game 3. They come out. Skylar and Wheeler both hit
Hmm.
7 and 9 from three, and somehow they win a game like that. But yeah, the odds are more in Vegas's favor for Game 3 than they are in Atlanta, despite the fact both teams are going home in a best of three with either side ready to advance. It just feels like Vegas are still rolling. That
Hmm.
there's no reason for this to break how they've been playing for the last month and a half with the whole streak. I do wonder what we've seen the last couple of games is that they've kind of gone away from the small lineup that they'd been using because they
Hmm.
now have Parkatias back as a backup big, so they feel like they've got someone they can go to. We saw it right at the death when things were going badly down the stretch. I'm intrigued to see whether Hammond shakes up the lineups at all, shakes up the rotation that she's been going with to just kind of mess things around. They've been switching up their defenses a little in that they sort of start super switchy, and that Seattle did a much better job of attacking that last night.
Mm.
In that, you know, because when you're as switchy as they started, then you can easily get Necker on Jackie Young, or you can get Sykes facing up against one of the bigs
Mhm.
and able to go past her. And they didn't do anything with that in game one. Last night, especially at the start of the game, they used those switches and went to Necker, and she shot over smaller players. And yeah, so whether they like Vegas ignore that option and just sort of play in a base defense, play drop on a pick and roll, and just stay more with the man, then we'll see whether they go with that. And that's going to be interesting going forward as well, because that's going to be a key issue with the bigger teams that they play next,
Yeah.
assuming Vegas do manage to go through.
Yeah. Well, we will see. Game 3 for both these series. I'm very excited for. I'm very excited for tonight's games as well. To see if we get any more game 3s potentially. So make sure you're tapped in here on the Her Hoop Stats podcast to get the full breakdown tomorrow after those games as well, and just the entire way here through the playoff. Every weekday you're getting an episode. So I know you can't get enough playoff basketball, so come get some playoff talk as well here from Her Hoop Stats. For Tyler, for Richard, we'll talk to you guys soon.